Welcome to Y Nada Más, a Real Madrid podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the Y Nada Más podcast. I am your host, Eric Rivera, and it is, that's the song. That's Old Lang Syne, or however you pronounce that. But that is, a classic song, obviously, for the new year. It's 2023. The new year has, is upon us, and just wanted to say, I think this is my third year, essentially. This is going to be the third year of the Y Nada Más podcast, and we're still growing. We're still trying to grow this thing, and I want to continue. I don't want to give up. I'm liking what I'm doing. I'm liking the podcast. I'm enjoying doing it, and I don't know. I don't know how many listeners I get. I know it's a couple thousand, so it's been pretty cool. I'm getting a lot of good feedback from all of you. Subscribers and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really important to me, and I'm very happy. It's been really important to the group. And you know what? I kind of wanted to get a couple different things out of the way before we start the podcast. So obviously it's 2023, New Year. Happy New Year to everyone. Happy holidays to everyone. For those of you that celebrate that here or wherever you are, I hope you guys had a good holiday season. If you had vacation or anything like that, I really hope you got to spend it with your friends, with your family. You got a chance to relax. I had a chance to relax. Obviously, I was, in the World Cup. I was not at the World Cup. I wasn't in it either. But I was in World Cup mode. And it's finally good to get back to Real Madrid, to kind of what is my passion, which is the Real Madrid football. And I'm not one of the people that hate international football. I like international football. I just feel like when it's World Cup time, and if your team isn't really in it, it is sometimes a little bit harder to get connected as much, especially for me. Growing up, Colombia, I think we've had a couple different good generations, and for them not to go to this World Cup, and they kind of just were so inconsistent throughout the qualifiers, really had a lot of chances to go through and win it. Not win it, but eventually, get a space in the World Cup. And, they really kind of pissed the bed towards the end. And a lot of things that has happened with Colombian football is really, which I think many of you that are from countries that maybe don't go to the World Cup as often. Some of you are from countries that have never gone to the World But the one thing that you're always kind of, I guess one thing that kind of always happens with Colombian football, and I don't know if many of you other, South Americans can relate, or Latin Americans, or even Europeans, is especially, it's a team that, plays so well. A lot of times we always say in Spanish, we say in Colombia, juegan como nunca, pierden como siempre, which means they play like, a lot of times in games, they play like they've never before. They play some great football, but they still always end up losing. And they lose because I think, it's just, I don't know. I think it's a mentality. I think there's issues with the coaching. I think the coach that we had in Colombia at that time for the World Cup qualifiers, is just not. And there's a whole thing that we call like La Rosca in Colombia, which is, it's kind of like the federation is corrupt, and it's friends of friends is who they end up electing to coach the team. So it's not always on merit. I think the best chance we had was with Nestor Peckerman, and it was because he wasn't taking crap for the Colombian press and things like that. And he was actually Argentinian. He was from outside Colombia, and so it was a little harder for them to, I think, for the local press to manipulate him or whatnot. But anyway, what happens at the end of the day is essentially, Colombia didn't make it because, they just they didn't play well. They're inconsistent. And sometimes a lot of teams, sometimes they go, sometimes they don't. They've had good good chances. They've had, great players, James Rodriguez, Falcao, Pibe Valderrama, Faustino Asprilla. We've had great players over the years when we've, been able to go to World Cups, but then I think there's a lack of discipline. I think there's sometimes a lack of passion. I think a lot of times sometimes I think as a Latin American, and I can say this, is that, a lot of times when we get to a World Cup, like a lot of Latin teams, when we get to a World Cup, we think we've won it before we've actually won it. It's a nightmare, So with that said, obviously, I wasn't as invested in this World Cup, although it was a fantastic World Cup. I think there was a lot of great things about it. I think, I'm not going to get into the whole political shit about it because I really, I have my own, obviously my own thoughts on certain issues, and I think, they need to be addressed. But I think I don't, I always find it funny to say that you keep politics out of football and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of times if you have a platform so as big as being a football player, you should have every right to use that, whether it's political or not. And, if people didn't speak up, people in power with power didn't speak up, then, it's really difficult for people that are not, that don't have, a big platform to ever get anything done, so they need, for things to happen, you need, people that are in power or people that have a strong platform to, speak up about certain issues. Whether you believe with those issues or not, obviously, I do kind of think, obviously, Qatar, there is a cultural thing there that, you kind of have to, you have to weigh that as well. And you have to weigh that towards what you're saying, but I do think, I don't know, man. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's the 21st fucking century, and there's some things that you just got to like, there's some things that, just let people do what the fuck they want, so whatever, anyway, that's my thing. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to lose some of you, but we can agree to disagree, and that's the point. So with that said as well, I thought Qatar was a great World Cup. Obviously didn't end the way I would like it. I have my whole issue with Argentina. It's not the Messi debate. It's just that I've always disliked Argentina. I guess growing up in Colombia and, at that time it was kind of in the era when we had Pibe and all these, they were a team, we did rival and, they were kind of the biggest rivals. And there is, the stereotype of them being arrogant or whatnot. And I always I chalk that up to the team. I don't chalk that up to the people as a whole. The people as a whole, like I said, I think I've said it on the last podcast. I've had friends that are Argentinian and I've met people from Argentina, and I swear I've never met one that I've disliked, so I've never personally met Emi Martinez. So that would probably be the first one I dislike, because that fucking guy needs to be put in his place and somebody needs to humble that guy. But regardless of that, and that's kind of one of my main reasons for wanting them to lose was that guy. And it goes back to a Copa America incident between him and Colombia where he tried to do, he was playing those games essentially, talking trash and everything. And they won the penalty shootout against the against Colombia. And, it was just kind of rubbed everyone in Colombia the wrong way kind of thing. But, and there's other players I don't like. I don't like Paredes, his attitude. I don't like Otamendi. So there are a couple different players there. But there are, obviously Messi, there's stuff there that was great to see him lift the cup. Although obviously as a Cristiano Ronaldo fan, it made me sad to him, to say the GOAT debate is over, and I think I don't say the GOAT debate is over because I think GOATs are always, essentially subjective. But, having the World Cup title is a huge thing that he can obviously put on his mantle, Messi can put on his mantle as opposed to Cristiano Ronaldo. But there have been a lot of players in the world that were fantastic players that never got to lift a World Cup. So does that really settle the debate? Because I think at the end of the day, like I said, it's subjective. You're going to feel, people love to talk about stats and things like that. But stats, you can, the funny thing about statistics is that you can always drudge up statistics to point. In a lot of ways you can drudge up, and there's so many things that people bring up now with these, statisticians and all these, like, I call them football nerds, which I like, but sometimes there's so much stuff that you can bring up, now with statistics that, and some of they're so pointless. Like, like obviously you have, the goals and assists, which, those are very good numbers. But then you have like, what is it? Like, not chances created, but then you have like most through passes and, most through passes into dangerous areas, most touches, there's all these like little things that you're like, okay, but that at the end of the day, does that really mean anything? Because we see that when you look at the eye test of things, sometimes a team can have all the possession in the world and they're still the team that ends up losing. And that's kind of what we've seen is this lately, is that growth of or the death of a little bit of that football that was, the tiki-taka. I'm not saying the death of tiki-taka as a whole, but tiki-taka of like that really, really strong possession football and moving the ball around and kind of making the other team chase it. And having the ball for so long as being sort of, that was the way to dominate another team, to where now teams are being like way more vertical. They're way more direct. They're happy to cede you, possession. And then their job is to kind of like, their goal is to, like, I call it the rope-a-dope of football, essentially, and that's obviously a boxing, Muhammad Ali, another GOAT term, but essentially the rope-a-dope, where they kind of lull you into complacency of having so much possession and, getting a lot of the ball. And then what they do is they hit you on the counterattack, and then that's how they scored against you. And a lot of teams are playing that football. A lot of teams, got very far in the World Cup playing just very strong defensive football and, few chances created, but they still were able to get far. Croatia did it. Especially with that midfield that they had. Morocco did an incredible job with that type of football. And, it can only last you so long sometimes. And it is sort of the football that an underdog team plays. But it always, this is kind of one thing I wanted to get into. There's a couple different topics that I want to touch on. But it's funny to me that people like shit on the underdog. I mean, they love an underdog. But then there was a lot of like comments about how like, at the end of the day, a final between Morocco and Croatia would have been boring. And, do you really want to see that kind of football? It's like, listen, man, to me, at the end of the day, if the team makes it, like if they can play the crappiest football you've ever seen. And yes, sometimes I hate teams that do that, like, that play that type of football. But at the end of the day, if you're an underdog and you're able to play some gritty, nasty, ugly football to make it towards the end, right? To make it to the end of a competition, which is a knockout competition, essentially. It's not a league, because I don't think you can win a league playing that, for 38 games in a season, let's say, right? It's going to be very difficult to do that, all the way out. But it's like, because that's a marathon. And essentially the World Cup is a sprint, so it really is like you got to do everything you possibly can to win that, and so playing that kind of gritty, dirty football, not sometimes appealing to the eye, if it's going to win you the championship, then screw it, man, do it, and to say that you're going to be like, Croatia and this team would have been bored. Listen, if they beat heavy hitters doing that, they beat teams like Morocco did, and kicking out essentially beating Spain, and then eliminating Portugal, and if they're able to do that, and eliminating Spain, if they're able to do that, then they deserve to get to the final. If they're able to do that, and get to the final, then they deserve to get to the final. And whether you like it or not is pointless, because at the end of the day, the fans of that country are going to be happy for that. As a neutral, I guess, yeah, you can bitch and moan and complain and call it anti-football and all this kind of thing. Like this whole thing about it being entertainment too. I'm like, dude, as somebody who used to compete in a completely different sport, but as somebody who used to compete, I honestly feel like, I could care less, honestly, about appeasing the fans, or appeasing people, that are looking, that aren't really fans of my team, right? Or fans of myself, appeasing them with making things look pretty if it's going to cost me at the end of the day a championship, because at the end of the day, I think for those teams, the people that matter the most aren't the naysayers. They're not the people that are some kind of like on the periphery. They're on the outside looking in. They're not, let's say, part of Morocco. they're not from Morocco. So they're hating the way that Morocco is playing. But then, like, for the Moroccan people, just getting there and getting to that level, getting to that final or getting to that semifinal essentially was enough to celebrate. And I don't care like how they would win. If they would win doing that, that country would have exploded and people would have been happy regardless. And the only people that would be talking trash about how they won would be, would be people that, want to talk about stats and anti-football and, it being about, about the beauty of the game and all that kind of stuff, man. I mean, I just think at the end of the day, it's a competition too. There is entertainment aspects to it, but the entertainment aspects are up to like FIFA. FIFA is the one that has to make the things entertaining. That's their job. And then the refs and things like that. And you can make it entertaining. You can influence the game in so many different ways. And I think we saw a lot of influence personally. I think there was a lot of shoddy refereeing. I think, Argentina got a huge help. I'm not saying that was the only reason they won the World Cup, but I feel like, getting 5 penalties was getting 5 or 6 penalties, which had never happened before in a World Cup, was kind of like, not to say a setup, but they really were pushing for their favorites and they're going to push for their favorites. And I think FIFA's going to do that. And I do think that the final, I think they're going to try to get, here's what I think. I think, and when it comes to the controversy, I think they're going to try to get the teams that they want to win or the teams that are most marketable. They're going to try to get them to the final. And do things that they can essentially, little, how would I say, what do they call the dark arts, essentially? They're going to do their little machinations, whether it's reffing, whether it's VAR, whether it, there's so many ways to manipulate the game. And I think it does happen. I think money does play a part in it. And I think they're going to want to get certain teams into certain positions because it's more lucrative that way. To obviously see like a France versus an Argentina as opposed to a Croatia versus a Morocco, or I don't know, a Senegal versus a France in the final or something like that. Or no, sorry, a Senegal versus, I don't know, a Ghana in the final, something like that. But who doesn't love an underdog story? I do. I personally would watch it. I'd watch football. I'd still watch it. It's the World Cup, But I think they're gonna, like I said, they're gonna do their little things to get there. And then I think in the final, I do think there was, there was sort of. I don't think I don't think things played too much of a factor in the final because at the end of the day, yes, a penalty was given. Yes, a penalty was a penalty was given, but then there was also a penalty, the 2 penalties given to France, and Kylian Mbappe scored them, and then then he also scores a banger, so there were definitely ways to, there were definitely you can't really say that anything was manipulated. It was just a banger of a game and it ended up going the way it went. So I not happy with it. Simply because, like I said, I don't like Argentina. But for Messi, great. I hate it for Messi fans. For the annoying Messi fans out there, I hate it completely. I even had some Messi fans, that I guess you could say were acquaintances or whatnot, talking trash to me, and I had to tell them to go fuck themselves because they got a little lippy, and that when you get a little lippy with me, man, I go off. You know what I mean? So sometimes that does happen. So with that said, listen, guys, I'm going to review a couple different topics here that I want to review. That was like this long-winded intro to get into this thing. Do me a favor and hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. If you guys are listening, on the audio, head over to Nada Mas Podcast on YouTube, see the video version of it if you want to. A lot of times I'm throwing things up on the screen, pictures and things like that that we now have the ability to do to make it more of an interactive sort of podcast. I'm also been doing live streams, but I haven't done one since the World Cup. I might do one the idea is to do one every single weekend. Every other weekend. So it'll be 1 week essentially of the podcast, and then so one time I'll do it live, and then one time I'll do it a live stream, then one time I'll do it live and live stream, then one time I'll do it. That came out wrong. So One time I'll do it as a live stream. One weekend I'll do it as a live stream. And then one day I'll do it as a podcast. And one day I'll lose a live stream, whatever. So I'll kind of let you guys know. Follow me on Twitch at Y Nada Más Podcast. So Twitch and Facebook is where we're going to do the lives. Eventually, hopefully we can get them on Facebook too, because I know we got followers there. Follow me on Twitter at Y Nada Más Podcast. And so listen, guys, big favor here is if you're listening and you're a fan, we're really trying to grow this thing, and I'm really going to do, I wouldn't even say it's a resolution. It's essentially, I am really going to work very, very hard with the team to make sure that the podcast doesn't fall off, because I know it's been off and on, but it's the holidays and I'd been in and out with my family and whatnot. But the idea is to essentially do the podcast every single weekend. And if I have chances during the weekly fixtures, today's Monday. Tomorrow we have a game for Copa del Rey for Real Madrid against Cacereño. If those games, and if I'm able to jump on and do a quick podcast after a game or something like that, I will be doing that. Another thing that I'm going to be doing, and that I'm trying to do, I don't know, you guys hit me up in the comments, hit me up via email at info@inadamas.net. Drop a comment if you think. I want to do sometimes the reaction videos that people do where, they're watching the game and they react to watching the game essentially. So I kind of want to do something like that. And then I'll splice it and react to, I guess major games, of course, like Champions League, and games like, the Madrid Derby, obviously El Clásico, really, really important games of Real Madrid. Nail biters, finals, semifinals, whatever, that kind of stuff. So if you want to see that kind of stuff, let me know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know. Drop us a comment on the, on Apple Podcasts. Please keep those comments coming on Apple Podcasts. Please keep those ratings coming on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends about the podcast. We're really going to hit it hard this year. That is my goal. I'm really going to hit hard. I'm going to dedicate myself 100%. Not to this only, but of course to trying to get this, like I said, we invested money into the look and feel of the podcast, putting up more things in the studio, making it, the ability to live stream, cleaning, getting better cameras, everything, trying to fix it up, to make it really exciting. So please, 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 subscribe to the podcast. Help me also get to 1,000 subscribers is what I'm trying to get to on the Y Nada Más YouTube. That'll help us, of course, grow and essentially do other things like, like be able to monetize it and do other things so we can actually, continue going. So your support is huge to that, I think there is we have like a PayPal donation link somewhere. I believe it's actually on the website. So ynadamas.net. Check us out at ynadamas.net. And if you can donate, to keep us, keep us going here, that would be a big help, because obviously, I'm not making any money from the podcast currently. I don't want to put it behind a paywall or anything like that. Maybe later on there could be some subscription-based stuff, but I would actually have to have something that I feel like I'd physically give you that you guys would enjoy, and not make it just like extra episodes or things like that, that's not hating on people that do that. I just don't want to do it that way. But I do want to make money. So, I'm going to throw up ads and do different things. And if you want to sponsor it or you have a product, just help me put the name out there. So with that said, guys, we're going to jump into the rest of the show. And kind of what I want to do now is really go, like I've been talking about lately. So you guys that are listening on the audio, like I said, check out the video version of the podcast, because what I do is I throw things up on screen and I talk about, we got pictures and videos and different things that I discuss about, what's been going on. So, wanted to basically talk about essentially a couple of things I already did talk about. Like I said, is, the World Cup, Messi winning the World Cup. There he is, kissing the World Cup with Infantino, and I think it's Al-Thani is the leader of Qatar, before he put that whatever the thing it was that he put on him, the robe or whatever, which was causing people to get in an uproar. I kind of do understand it though, because I think you want to take the picture with, like, your jersey and the whole team. And that kind of did cover up the jersey, but I understand that there was like it's a cultural thing. So it's a cultural thing as in like Al-Tiny giving him that honor. It was like an honor. So it's kind of like, let them do things. I think, sometimes culturally, like people want to like dictate things based on however they personally feel about things. But I think it's kind of ridiculous. Like let him, if he wants to do it, whatever. I mean, if Messi didn't have a problem with it, then he didn't have a problem with it, So yeah, man, I mean, like I said, I just, I'm not a Messi hater. I'm not a Ronaldo. I am a Ronaldo fanboy, but I'm not a Ronaldo fanboy to the degree that, I'm going to hate on Messi, that I'm going to hate on Messi and say, he's not the GOAT. He's not good. I mean, like I said, the whole GOAT debate, the greatest of all time, I don't think that's something you can really quantify if you're talking about so many great players that came into the game. Is he in the conversation of being one of the greatest of all time? Sure. You can, but there's a lot of greatest of all times essentially in football, because there's no way that you can kind of say, yes, one guy is, like I said, it's always subjective. If you love Messi, I don't think anything is going to change your idea of him being the GOAT. If he would have lost the World Cup, I don't think you would have stopped thinking that he was the GOAT. And then like if Cristiano won, let's say if Cristiano won the World Cup, I don't think anybody that loved Messi was going to stop thinking that Messi was the GOAT and Cristiano wasn't, and having this same argument that I'm having right now. I just don't think, I think if you're a Messi lover, you're a Messi lover. If you're a Messi hater, you're a Messi hater. If you're a Ronaldo, and pitting these two guys against each other who really probably could care less about the whole thing, couldn't care less about the entire thing, in the sense that they're going to do what they have to do to continue to compete. I doubt it's one against the other that they, personally feel like they want to beat each other to a pulp. I just don't think that happens. And then, I just, and honestly, the reason I'm kind of a Ronaldo fan is because this narrative that Messi is this like perfect little good boy, sort of, doesn't talk trash and all of that kind of stuff. Listen, it's personalities, man. Like there are players who talk trash and there are players who don't, just like there are people who are arrogant and people who don't. There are people who are charismatic and people who are not. I mean, and to me, honestly, this whole idea is like, Messi, I don't see him as a charismatic guy. He seems like somewhat of a shy, more reserved guy. And I guess for some people that's more relatable. And then Ronaldo is your sort of braggadocious, arrogant, knows he's really fucking good and is going to tell you that he's really fucking good, and that's, it's weird to me because I also think it's a cultural thing, because a lot of Americans do love, they love drama and they love the shit talking. They love the trash talking. A lot of times we embrace the heels in this world of the world. And by heel, that's like a wrestling term. And I don't like wrestling. I'm talking about professional wrestling. But the heel is essentially kind of like the villain, and it's come out to where kind of like Cristiano Ronaldo is the villain of some sort of soap opera where you really hate the guy because he's always the bad guy. But for the longest part of the show, he gets everything to go his way. And the guy who's the hero doesn't have things go his way. So essentially Messi and Ronaldo's whole careers played out kind of that way. Messi losing, 2 Copa America finals, losing a World Cup final, and really not getting, what everybody felt he deserved, while Ronaldo was winning, a Nations League and a Euro Cup, and things were sort of seeming to go the way of the Portuguese player and not the way of the, everyone's favorite Argentinian in the world, So I think that was something that, affected everybody, and they kind of wanted, that he deserved it more than, let's say, a Cristiano Ronaldo, because Cristiano Ronaldo, what rubs people the wrong way? Because he's braggadocious, because he talks shit, because he likes to, he speaks his mind, and he just happens to be an overly confident guy. But, it's funny because in America, in the United States, we happen to love those guys sometimes, We happen to love those guys that talk trash. I mean, the funny thing is, look at Argentina, and you have a guy like Messi, but then you have a guy like Emiliano Martinez, who is pretty much almost like a Ronaldo-esque character on the team, who is a guy who talks trash, who likes to get in your face. He's probably even more so than Ronaldo, because I don't remember Ronaldo taunting people like Emiliano to that degree. So you're getting like two guys that are kind of, and they're on the, essentially Emiliano Martinez and Leo Messi on the same team. And then if you look in sports history, you have guys, people love Zlatan, but they hate, some people hate Zlatan. Some people love Zlatan, for being as arrogant or as confident, you can say, as he is. People hate it. I remind people, like, talking about the fighting background and boxing background. People hated back in the day, people absolutely disliked Muhammad Ali for everything that he said, for speaking in poetry and speaking in like rhymes and, telling everybody, I float like a butterfly. I sting like a bee. If you even think about me, you got to wake up. You better wake up and apologize. All of those type of mentality. That was a mentality that people disliked during that time. A lot of people wanted to see Ali lose. I guarantee you, a lot of people tuned in to see Ali lose the same way a lot of people tuned in to see Floyd Mayweather lose, because they, just disliked the fact that he was. That he talks what he talks, that he talks trash, that he likes to talk trash, that he'll come out in a sombrero on a Cinco de Mayo fight and kind of mock, in a way, Mexican culture, or that's what they felt they perceived he was doing. And I believe in that fight I believe it was against De La Hoya, so we kind of always in the United States have embraced those sort of characters that were, confident, arrogant. But like the thing is, those guys, like you look at Muhammad Ali, you look at Floyd Mayweather, you look at Michael Jordan, who was known for being, kind of a prick, on the court. Kobe was known for being super competitive. You look at all those guys and they all had that sort of arrogant confidence about them, that swagger. And Ronaldo has that. Cristiano Ronaldo has that because he's damn good. And I think the thing is, he just rubs people the wrong way. And so there's this, it's so weird to me because it's this viciousness that I see from the media, especially like clowns from fucking ESPN FC. And, like all they want to do is talk trash about the guy and everything he does. He's ridiculous because he walked off the field. It was disrespectful. Like they'd never seen a player do that in their entire life, and was it disrespectful? Sure, it was disrespectful. But, was it disrespectful to essentially keep on saying that you had him in your plans to play him and then not play him? Yeah, sure. So I just have a thing with this whole, and I'm showing pictures of Messi, but, I think it's just that they're kind of pitting two different personalities against each other. And the idea is, the media creates these narratives, and that's these narratives that because they want to push, they have to make it entertaining at the end of the day. They take away the competitiveness part of it and make it an entertainment part of it. And so they pit it like these guys are two enemies, one of the other, and they are two guys that are so diametrically opposed to each other in personality. And that couldn't be, I don't think, further from the truth. I think Messi is probably just as competitive as Cristiano. We saw a little bit of that fire in him during this World Cup, especially with the, in the Netherlands versus Argentina game. We saw that, the trash talking and all that stuff, which, like I said, the thing is, all these antics, I personally don't like them, but with Cristiano, I kind of do. And it's weird because I've not liked people like this in the past, there's certain people I don't like, but then there's certain guys that for some reason they're charismatic, they're cool, you like them, and even though they're a little bit arrogant, it's okay, And then the thing is, if we talk about Cristiano Ronaldo's off the field, behavior, he's a family guy. He for all intents and purposes and everything that we've seen, the evidence shows us that he's absolutely fantastic off the field, with kids, with charities, with, giving time to helping, to working with, causes to help underprivileged people and all sorts of things like that. I mean, off the field, his behavior is completely different than what he's perceived to be on the field. So it's two different. They're just creating these narratives, and it's just like it's so wild to see the hatred. And sure, then there's because you could use banter essentially. Like I've said that Messi was a choke artist and happy when he's failed and kind of things like that because I'm a Ronaldo fan and I kind of want to, I want to stir the shit, with the Messi fan base, but not with Messi himself. I think what happens is you have to realize that these guys are to say that these two guys are not the best of their generation is absolutely insane. Could Messi be slightly better? Yeah, that's your opinion. And obviously the World Cup is going to help that. But for me, Cristiano Ronaldo is kind of like my style. I mean, listen, I'm a big guy. I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'2". Cristiano is 6'2". I like more the power over the finesse. Maybe that's kind of more my style. I like his flashiness. I like the little bit of that braggadociousness, but then at the fact that he also seems to be somewhat of a down-to-earth guy outside of the game, so those kind of things. And then, of course, there's other factors that play into it. I'm a Real Madrid fan, so I'm always going to love Cristiano, It's just the way it is. If I was a Barcelona fan, maybe I wouldn't be talking like this. Maybe I'd be completely on Messi's side. But anyway, that's kind of what it is. And I do feel to this day, and I said, because of my Argentina bias, which doesn't include Messi again, my Argentina bias and the reason I dislike them, just from a South American perspective. And this whole idea of everyone sort of lumping South Americans into this one continent where we're all the same thing, where we're all Latinos. That's because we share a similar language, then we all have to support each other, because if not, you're some kind of piece of shit or something. And that couldn't be further from the truth, because honestly, if you grew up in South America, honestly, there's all these countries really don't. When it comes to competitions, we don't like each other. The rivalries between Brazil and Argentina, Uruguay and Argentina, Chile and Peru, Colombia and Venezuela, Ecuador and Peru. I mean, there's little rivalries all over, and it is a rivalry, and we don't want them to win. I was honestly more when it came to the Latin American countries, I liked what I was seeing from Ecuador, and I wanted them to go further than they did. I think they kind of lost some steam, definitely, in that Senegal game where they could have gone home. They could have won that game and essentially gotten out of their group. But it didn't happen. I thought they could go further. I thought they looked great. I thought Ender Valencia looked fantastic, and there were other players there on the Ecuadorian team, and they've been solid for a couple of years now, Ecuador. So so I mean, this whole thing, it's to me, it's like telling everyone that speaks Spanish, because we're Latinos, that we need to support one another, is like telling the Irish, the English, the Scottish, and the Welsh, and the Americans, that they all should support each other because they share a common language. And I don't think that you would ever see them support each other, I mean, hell, you're going to have a tough time getting a Spurs fan and an Arsenal fan to agree with one another. When it comes to the club teams, we're so divided just within a city. So this whole idea that it's all because they're Latin, it's a World Cup. No, man, I wanted France to win. Usually my team is Italy, so. The team that I kind of like, Italy and Germany are the two teams I go to when Colombia is not there, and Portugal with Cristiano. But I'll probably keep going with Portugal because I have some, Portuguese roots in me. Portuguese, Spanish, from La Coruña. So, those are the teams I go for when Colombia doesn't, qualify. Croatia has been one that's kind of always another one that I always go for. So I would Croatia, Portugal, France. Well, not really France. I would say France because they're good. But Germany, Italy, Portugal, kind of the ones I always go for. And then of course, Colombia would be number one. And then Croatia's also in there. I always like to see them go far because of Modric, but then they've grown on me, man. I like Brozovic. I like what I saw from Sosa. I like that new guy. What is it? Meyer. I just like them. I like the Croatian. I like the Balkan teams. Even Serbia is interesting to me. So with that said, let's move on from this World Cup talk. And let's go into some other talk there. I haven't even gotten into Real Madrid talk yet, but, hey, stick with me. So Ronaldo signs for Al-Nassr in Saudi Arabia. And then, yes, I don't want to beat around the bush too much with this. Definitely, a lot. I don't want to, not beat around the bush. I would say beat a dead horse because it's been so talked about. But my opinion of this whole thing is, sure, it's disappointing. I think it was a little bit disappointing when I first heard it. Like, oh God, he really did go to Saudi Arabia and to a league that really doesn't have a lot of panache. It doesn't have much recognition. But the thing is, Al-Nassr isn't a team that is like, as an avid FIFA player that I've been over my years, I've recognized Al-Nassr because of players like Anderson Talisca and Abu Bakr and I think Luis Gustavo is there too. I know they have Rudy Garcia as their coach. So there's they've had players there, and you have players like Iniesta going to Japan, and people make all these memes all the time. You've never seen me make these memes because I think at the end of the day, when your career is coming to an end, you always see these guys go to like these teams. Nobody ever. I think you have two choices really. You retire on top, essentially, if you retire early, right? Because if you want to stay at the top, let's say if you want to retire at a Real Madrid, or you want to retire, and when I mean retire, I mean finish your career as a footballer. If you want to retire at the highest level, let's say you want to retire from a team like, I don't know, currently, let's say a Manchester City, a PSG, a Bayern Munich, a Real Madrid, a Barcelona. Well, Barcelona is not really a top team, are they? But anyway, you want to retire from those teams at a top level. You're really going to have to retire early because a lot of those teams are not going to hold you there, are not going to keep you there well into your 30s. Ronaldo is 37. He's going to be 38 in February. And the thing is, could he possibly retire at Real Madrid? I really thought for a second there was going to be some truth to that whole thing, but it didn't happen, It didn't happen, and it turns out, he's going to Al-Nassr. So what are we going to do about it? He's 38. He's going to that. We saw Iniesta go to Japan. We saw Xavi go to Qatar. We saw, Beckham in the MLS. We saw Ibrahimovic in the MLS before he returned to Milan. But in Milan, he's really, he's a backup player. He's not a starter. We've seen it throughout the years. We saw freaking Ronaldinho at Querétaro. We saw, Pelé went to, rest in peace, Pelé. We saw him go to New York Cosmos. We saw all of these things that towards the end of their careers, they go to leagues that no longer, are as strong. And Ronaldo at 38, Cristiano Ronaldo at 38 years old is going to the Saudi Arabian League. And as much as I think it is disappointing that we're not going to be able to see him maybe in a Champions League again or whatever, although there are some rumors about some Newcastle thing or whatever, but I think I saw a tweet where that was shut down, that wasn't true, like that he could go to Newcastle on loan if they qualify for the Champions League because the same Saudi investment fund owns both teams, and owns Al-Nassr and then owns owns Newcastle, So that would be great, but I just don't see it happening. And I think what it is I think what happens here is Cristiano is such a competitive player that at the end of the day, what he wants is minutes, and he just wants to keep playing ball, and he wants to be a starter. He wants to have minutes on the field. He doesn't want to play a bit part on any team. And the thing is, in Europe, I don't think really realistically he's going to be getting the minutes on any top team. He's not going to be getting minutes from, like a Manchester United, which honestly, I think he still could have played there if, I personally don't, think Ten Hag kind of handled that well either. I think there were ways if you didn't want the guy, you didn't want the guy. You could have just gone, and said it outright and then just let things play out instead of saying that you did want him, and that you were going to use him. And then finally, to a point where you're just giving him like 3 minutes at the end of a game or trying to give him 3 minutes at an end of a game like he's some sort of academy player, or some kind of teenager, which I think any player that was at the top of his game would find offensive, But either way, with that said, I think, he realizes now, and I think he's had to humble himself. He's definitely had to humble himself and realize, listen, man, I'm not going to get those. I'm not going to get a contract at a big club. They're probably not going to be able to pay my wages. If I go to a smaller club, they're probably not going to be able to pay my wages. I'll lose money. So I'm going to have to go to some place where I'm going to play a lot of minutes. And I think, there was rumors about the MLS, Kansas City, that kind of stuff. Could have gone back to Sporting. Was there ever really any interest from Sporting? Who knows? He could possibly still go to Sporting at some point. I don't think any of these things are usually set in stone, but he's going to Al-Nassr. And not only that, he's going for something like $200 million a season, something ridiculous like that, becoming the highest paid player in football of all time. I think this is the highest contract of all time, something like that, which is absolutely ridiculous. Look at this. So here's the breakdown that I saw from ESPN FC, even though I freaking hate sometimes their takes on shit. But Cristiano Ronaldo's reported contract breakdown is $200 million a year, which translates to $16.6 million a month, $548,000 a day, $22,833 an hour, $380 a minute, and $6.34 a second, which essentially means if this dude went up to a drive-thru, which Cristiano would never go to drive-thru and get some fast food, but he went through a drive-thru and he ordered, let's say, I don't know, a quarter pounder with fries, if you guys know McDonald's, right? A quarter pounder with fries, or a Royale with cheese, which I think is what they call it in England, or overseas, because there's no pounds. So, pounds as in the weight. So the quarter pounder with cheese, essentially a combo is, I don't know, about $6, $7, $8. I don't know what it is. Essentially he could order one of those. And by the time he's even finished ordering it, he hasn't even received his food yet. By the time he's received his food, he's already paid for 100 and God knows how many combos, already. He just made up his back, all that money back from that spend and then some, by the time he finishes eating it, he's already made, I don't know, he's let's say he takes 5 minutes. He's already well over $1,000. So that is one hell of a contract. And honestly, man, I do hate the fact that, so much money is going into football now. I am one of those guys that has that romantic vision. Like I said, it is a business. I do feel like at the end of the day, it is a business, but I do hate the fact that now it's you have these mega teams that buy all these players and things like that, like Man City, what is it? Man City, you got Newcastle, you have Chelsea when they had Roman Abramovich, you have PSG, so you have all these teams that are just injected with, oil money and millions of dollars. And I think it, and you're getting these super teams essentially at the expense of all these other teams that really do have socios and are kind of run by the fans and have smaller, amounts of money. I really kind of, money I think does help. But I think when it's these gigantic teams that are making these super teams, it does kind of get disgusting and bothersome. But, I think at this point, he's going to a league. At least, he's going to a team. He's not going to PSG. He's not going to one of those teams. He's going to Saudi Arabia. to play for a team that not many people I think even knew existed until they saw this. But I mean, I don't think the man. I think he had to sit down with himself and realize, I'm not going to win the World Cup. The chances of doing that are very far away. If I'm ever even going to get called up for Portugal again, if I'm going to be playing at 41 in a World Cup. So the chances of that happening are very far away. Will I, a top team in the world isn't going to pay me what I want or pay me enough money. I guess he wasn't willing to lower it. And maybe even if he was willing to lower it, teams weren't calling. And if they were calling, it was as like I said, as a bit part player. And he doesn't want to be a bit part player. He wants minutes. He wants to continue to compete. Maybe he wants to, continue to make headlines. Maybe he also wants to be, and this was one of my other opinions on this whole thing, maybe he does want to be outside of the press, essentially, of all the crazy press, whether it's in England or in Spain, which has the press is completely cutthroat, and in England too. And then if in MLS, it would have been a huge thing too here. Maybe he wanted to get away from all that. I mean, because in Saudi Arabia, it's a completely different language, a completely different culture for many Westerners. It's kind of, for them, they feel like isolated from what they know. Some people I would say are, very prejudiced towards that sort of side of the world, unfortunately, and could, thumb their nose at the situation with what we saw with some of the narratives around Qatar. Although, I mean, there's reason for Qatar. There's reasons to sort of dislike Qatar. There's reasons to dislike Saudi Arabia and the regimes that they have, not the people or not the culture. But, with that said, I think in a way this can kind of shield him from all the BS, that has kind of plagued his life for so long. So I say good on him, man. He's got nothing left to prove. I'm actually going to figure out how I can maybe catch a stream every once in a while and support the dude. Like I said, he's always going to be a legend to me. He's the GOAT for me. He's the guy that I loved watching and made me in a lot of ways continue to be obsessed with football and especially Real Madrid. So, more power to him. And, his brand is just insane. The shirts for Al-Nassr, apparently I saw like 250,000 shirts were sold, I think, in one day or something when the signing was announced. So it's pretty wild. So, good on him. Good on him. And, I think like a lot of people thought it was probably disappointing for people. But at the end of the day, I think it's at 38, he still wants to compete and he's going to get a shitload of money for it. If I was in his shoes, would I turn it down? The thing is, thinking as me right now as a guy who's just, middle-class dude making a middle-class salary, would I turn down $200 million a year to kick a ball if it just happened to have that talent, I don't know. Even with all the money in the world, I guess, you kind of just like, it's a good offer. I'm going to get paid. Going to be good for my kids, good for my grandkids, good for how many generations of my family. And the guy's a family man, so he took the deal. And who knows what else is in there? So, what other things are on the books for that? All right. Anyway, to get into some Real Madrid news, and we'll kind of go in quickly because it was the game on the weekend, the game versus Valladolid was I kind of liked the football I saw in the first maybe 20 minutes of the game. And then it started to become sort of a labored, very difficult game, which has sort of plagued Madrid as of late. Obviously we were without, the likes of Luka Modric and Tchouaméni and some other players that were still coming back from the World Cup. Vinicius Jr. jumped in right away. Rodrigo was, he was on the bench. Asensio started. Ceballos started. Our back line was pretty much the back line, our back line. And but it seemed like they were labored, sort of out of rhythm a little bit. Karim Benzema definitely looked out of it for a little bit, but it only took him, he was still able to score, and I think he needed that. And, I can't wait to see him get back to it. I also thought Vini was, as always, very, he is a threat. He is a nightmare for defenders when they see him running at him. Was he able to be at his absolute best? No, I don't think so. But he's also, I think, the World Cup, this is the first game back. I think everyone's going to take some time to, get that chemistry back from to get back into the feeling of the game again. But I felt like they did well, well enough. Of course, we walk away with the points. Obviously, the guy who saved the game, and I didn't have the picture here, is Thibaut Courtois. My God, Thibaut Courtois did an amazing job keeping us in the game. Valladolid had a lot of chances in the second half. Camavinga also, who I don't have a picture of here. And I just wanted to say I love this picture of Karim Benzema, but, I love Karim Benzema. So there is a bias there. But this picture, is just pretty cold, as they say, as the kids say. But after he scores, he scores a brace, essentially gets, and really the difference maker on the team, definitely Tchouaméni. It's not Tchouaméni. Thibaut Courtois is making those big saves, and then Camavinga had a great game for France in the final of the World Cup, coming on as a left back, right? He played as a left back, looking just incredibly solid. I mean, the guy is just a talented player. I want to see him more, but obviously we have, so many talented players in the midfield. It's going to take time for him to break into that. But I think he comes on, and I think Ancelotti said as much. Ancelotti said as much recently, that him coming on, in the second half, or coming on as a substitute, immediately injects pace. It immediately injects sort of a new air into the team. And then you could see it as soon as he came on. He made a difference. He made a fantastic run to get the second goal for Real Madrid, to give the assist to Karim Benzema, who makes the second goal for Real Madrid. And then he went on another blistering run and sort of lost. I think he took a shot and sort of lost his bearings, essentially, but he just ran through the midfield, progressed the ball from the midfield all the way to the final third. And I think he could have, if he would have squared it, or at least passed it to Benzema, who looked like he was waiting there on the wing, or just on the left side of the box, he could have. Karim could have had a hat trick, essentially. But I think the team at the end shows what they're known for, which is they don't give up, and that was a solid performance there in the final minutes of the game, always making us have a heart attack. But you know what? I'm going to take back solid performance. It wasn't a solid performance, but it was just a very Real Madrid performance as of late. But something, I guess, that I kind of will forgive, having just coming back, the league just starting this weekend. Karim Benzema not getting minutes. There's a whole fiasco, obviously, around him in the French national team, let's let them get rhythm back and see if this continues. But I have a lot of faith in the team, and I think they're gonna continue to do well. We'll see what happens tomorrow against Cacereño with Copa del Rey, because that is always scary. Copa del Rey for us is always scary. We played Alcoyano and got beat by Alcoyano, which is a third division team, and Cacereño, I think, is another third division team. And these teams always end up surprising us, because I don't know if we let our guard down or what it is, or we're just cursed in the Copa del Rey. Somebody on Twitter, and I don't remember who wrote it, but said that they were more afraid of Cacereño than they were of Liverpool. So in the Champions League, that tie is coming up, I believe, in February. So that I think for many Madridistas, Copa del Rey is sort of that boogeyman, So anyway, I just wanted to. So I'm throwing up this picture because this is the goal. Essentially, this is from the 2020-2021 season, where Atletico Madrid wins the title. We were fighting against Atletico Madrid until almost like the final games. We play a game against Sevilla that ends up in a tie, and they give an absolutely BS penalty to Sevilla when Militao and Diego Carlos, I believe that is in the picture because it's a tiny pixelated picture, but they both jump up to contest for the ball. Diego Carlos hits the ball with his head. Militao jumps with his back to the ball. Essentially, his back is to the ball. He's kind of turning in the air, and his hand is out. And as Diego Carlos hits the ball, it hits Militao's hand, who is completely unaware of where he even is, or where the ball even is. So it's absolutely unintentional. Absolutely can't even see where the ball is, and it hits his hand. And they call a penalty, and apparently, I think back then it was still kind of like, the whole, is it intentional? Is it not? Are you stopping like a goal scoring opportunity? Like all that kind of stuff. If it comes off another player, or it comes, like all this kind of other things, all these kind of things, or comes off yourself or whatever, because I don't know if it hit his shoulder and then hit his hand. But anyway, they call this penalty. And it essentially cost us the league, because I think in this game was the one that cost us the league. I think the score ended up 2-2. So we obviously lost 2 points that were very necessary to overtake Atletico. So this is the same penalty that was called against Valladolid for the first pen. And everybody, especially culés in Barcelona, were up in arms about Madrid winning that way and all that crap. It should never be a penalty, whatnot. But how soon they forget of the fact that this penalty was given just 2 seasons ago. And then at the beginning of the game, they didn't give what was a clear handball, because the ref says that it was the hand where the player, because I understand the rule is if the hand is being used to, let's say, break your fall, right? And the ball hits your hand, that is what you're using to break your fall, then essentially that it's not a handball. But the ball hits the hand that wasn't the hand the player was using to break his fall. It didn't even go to VAR, because I think they should have definitely overturned that, and it should have been a handball. It should have been a penalty. It was a terrible call, in my opinion. And so, whatever. I no longer care, because La Liga is absolutely batshit crazy when it comes to officiating and everything. And that's more in line with this, because, moving on to Vinicius and his whole problems, and, talking about the racism in La Liga, which there is, and there's a lot of racism in La Liga. There's a lot of racism in Spain. There's a lot of racism in Latin America. There's a lot of racism anywhere, because a lot of people are just absolutely fucking stupid, racist pieces of shit. And, and I have no tolerance for it. And the fact that La Liga, that Vinicius Jr. states, of everything that happened at the game, right? He talks about everything that happens at the game, and then, that they're screaming, they're making monkey chants at him and all this kind of shit. And I have the video right here. They're saying like, fuck you, all this kind of stuff in Spanish, There's a lot of profanity in this. I'm sorry, kids, there's a lot of profanity in this episode. I really do apologize for that. Parents, I do not mean to do that, but I'm sorry. I get heated in an argument. So, but this is what the people were chanting. So they were saying all sorts of things to him, racist chants, monkey chants, making monkey noises, all of this kind of stuff, chanting as a whole group, almost an entire group of people, almost an entire stand chanting mono, which means monkey, to Vinicius as he's walking. And they're saying that he was the one, they're trying to go with the narrative that he was the one provoking them, because he took the long way around in order to get back to the bench, when it was the ref who told him to go that way. And then he celebrates the penalty that Karim Benzema scores in front of the fans. So they get even angrier. Some of them people toss things at him. He kicks something that they tossed at him. Why wouldn't he celebrate a goal that his team scored after what was a very contentious game, or a very sort of, gritty game, essentially? So, and so Vini calls it out on Twitter. He essentially talks about it and says, La Liga does nothing to combat the racism and whatnot. And Tebas, in all his, genius that he is, the idiot that this guy is, for many, many different reasons, says, you should educate yourself, something to this effect. Obviously, I'm not but you should educate yourself or learn more before saying these things, because we've been fighting for a long time against racism in La Liga. And it's something we've always sought to address. But then he doesn't say anything else. So, this is where I was listening to other pundits and I was, agreeing with them, because where in La Liga do we see things actually happen to perpetrators of racist chants? What happens to them? What happens to these people? And they're even caught on video. So here's the video of this. He's walking around. They're sticking up their middle fingers at him. They're throwing things at him. He kicks a cup back or something. They're saying, mono, mono, son of a bitch. They're laughing. Some dork kid there is laughing. You could see his face in plain view. It's on camera. How does Valladolid and La Liga not find these people and then essentially, number one, ban them from the stadium, right? Or suspend them from going to games? We haven't seen that happen. We didn't see it. I saw the same thing happened with Atletico Madrid, the Atletico Madrid derby, with Rodrigo and Vinicius celebrating after Rodrigo scores a goal. There you with Nazi salutes, and La Liga does absolutely nothing. And the thing that, I think it was Shaka Hislop from ESPN FC was saying, which I did agree with, and I don't always agree with those guys at all, was you don't see the steps being taken. You don't see, you don't see stadium bans. You don't see, we caught who it is and they've been banned from the stadium. We found out who this person is. They're no longer allowed to enter the stadium. We apologize. You don't see, what happens in some other leagues where they shut down they shut down the stadium and they have to play behind closed doors, or they shut down that side or that stand. So there's limited capacity. You don't see those things happen in La Liga. And I was reading something recently from La Liga where it was that Real Madrid can essentially, if they go and if they were to protest this thing, and bring it up, they can essentially get the Estadio José Zorrilla shut down for a game or 3 games or something like that. But that there is kind of an unwritten rule between teams to not snitch on each other for this kind of thing. And so that goes into the entire problem with La Liga, essentially, which is that there is a problem with the culture of not wanting to address these things, because I don't know what it is, but there is a problem, and it's wretched in Spain with racism, and it is disgusting. And listen, I say that as a fucking white guy, but man, nothing makes my blood boil more than this type of crap, dude, because you can't say, it's in the heat of the moment, it's competitive. Dude, nothing in the heat of the moment. Listen, I've been to games and I'm in the heat of the moment. I've fought in the ring in the heat of the moment, fighting guys. A lot of those guys happen to be African-American or black, whether they were from the United States or not. Some of them were from Holland and things like that. But they were black, and as heated as things would get and as violent as the sport could be, I never once crossed my mind to use any sort of racial terminology to basically, or racial insult, to use an insult about using their race as a weapon, So it's absolutely ridiculous for this to be this kind of stuff to be when people call out racism. I know some people use the race card way too much, and some things are obviously not racist. But in this situation, when you're calling somebody mono, and you're making monkey noises as they're walking by, and this isn't the first time this has happened in La Liga. Even I don't like Dani Alves and didn't like Barcelona, seeing a banana thrown at him. When they played Villarreal back in the day, it's equally disgusting. The chance that I think Eto'o received at some point, Vinicius has received, and it's not only obviously in in Spanish football. It happens a lot in another league that I happen to love, which is the Italian football. And Italian football is also full of racism. And they have all these politicians that come out and say, oh, we're not a racist country and all this other bullshit. When you know 100% that there is a large portion of the country that is racist and that there needs to be education and there needs to be some sort of thing brought to it. And what more powerful thing than football to be able to use that and say, listen, man, you want to behave this way, then your team is going to get penalized for it. And La Liga really needs to do something about it. And who cares? I don't honestly care. You could say Vinicius is un provocador or he's an instigator. Plenty of other players were. Neymar was from Barcelona. Other players were. And, I'm saying this as a Madrid fan myself. I mean, there are other Madrid people that I know or that I've read on Twitter that are absolutely terrible and disgusting racists. And, I hate the fact that they're part of Madridistas or Madridismo. But it's a Spanish problem in the sense of in Spain, not a problem with the club, but it's happened not just to one team or the other, but it needs to be addressed, whoever it's coming from. If it's coming from Madrid, I would love Madrid to address it. I'm actually dislike the fact that Madrid doesn't address, like in a comunicado or something, in an official communication from the club saying, we absolutely, are against the type of behavior that we saw at the team, directed against our player, We're going to take all the steps necessary. Who cares about some unwritten rule and some pact between the clubs? You want to deal with this shit, you nip it in the butt, So that's it's something that I'm real passionate about, man. I can't stand it. So anyway, moving on from there. More La Liga garbage, essentially, so Barcelona played, and this really doesn't have to do with Barcelona or even Lewandowski per se, but the fact, Lewandowski, I like Lewandowski as a player, but the whole issue of him getting a 3-match ban and then essentially being able to play against Espanyol was absolutely ridiculous. And another thing that just shows La Liga and their rules are an absolute joke, and that this league, if it doesn't fix itself, and as much as I love La Liga and I watch it over any other leagues, if they don't fix this stuff and this stupidity and this corruption that they have in this league, they are going to absolutely be the laughing stock and continue being a laughing. And their how would I say, their stature as one of the top leagues in Europe is going to continue to diminish, and they're going to lose players. I think, with this racism crap and all this, the reffing, the officiating being just an absolute fiasco. And then things like this, where, a match ban, the 3-match ban is essentially not overturned, but it's just put on pause until it's convenient for Barcelona to have him, until maybe there's a string of games where not having Lewandowski might not be as detrimental to us. So him being, allowed to play this game because they're still trying to decide the final outcome of a 3-match ban. Like, the idea is, okay, you might want to say this whole idea, okay, fine. If it's not a 3-match ban, right? If you don't want to say, like, okay, 3-match ban because it was a direct red card and he did this whole thing, like maybe this ref is high or whatever, so he did this little thing with his nose. If you want to argue that shouldn't be a 3-match ban because he made a gesture and whatever, but he still got a red card, and they, and I think the CAS or whatever it is, the arbitrator of sport, the court of sport arbitration or whatever, says, no, we're not going to overturn it. It is what it is. You get a 3-match ban. Like, even if they wanted to say, listen, we're going to fight this, but until then, we don't think it's 3 matches, so we're going to fight it. But you're still going to get a 1-match ban. He should have at least served a 1-match ban. You just don't pause it and then use it when you feel it's convenient. He's going to play against Atletico, apparently this weekend or something. So it's just ridiculous that this kind of stuff happens, and it's a laughable thing with the reffing, like I said, with the handball and whatnot, and then this clown in the game between Barcelona and Espanyol, Mateo Laos, who already made a complete meal of the game between Argentina and Netherlands in the World Cup, not sending off Messi when he was a blatant handball. Should have sent off Paredes for kicking the ball towards the stands. the bench of the Netherlands. There were countless other things that could have been called on both sides. And then here in this game, it was just like he has to be the star of the show, throwing out red cards, yellow cards, just making it come. And look at that face, man. He looks like a complete idiot. So somebody's got to rein this guy in, man, because he's just the guy's a clown. A clown, man. And it's just, like I said, it's just only serving to continue to just make this league look dumber, you know? And it really shouldn't be that way. So, that's just my thoughts on the whole thing, they got to fix these things, because if not, La Liga is just going to continue to dwindle. It's already seen as a 2-horse race, maybe 3-horse race occasionally with Atletico. The bottom of the pack starts becoming more and more the bottom of the pack. And then you have all these sort of, and I don't, honestly, I'll speak as a Madridista, I don't like it when we as Real Madrid win based on sort of, stupid reffing decisions too. I find it like, sure, it's good because it goes our way, but at the end of the day, I don't like to be the center of controversy, and then the greatness of the club and our players and all that kind of stuff, and our wins come into question because they're saying, they got that call in their favor, which was dubious, And the problem is, so many calls in La Liga are dubious, and it happens way too much, so much so that they're just hoping that they can continue to do this crap, and that people are just going to get used to it and then shut up about it. But nobody should shut up about it, I obviously, I don't know, not many people listen to me, and obviously this is not going to go to some people up in Spain because there's a language barrier, but I'm trying to bring the love of La Liga and the love of Spanish football and the love of Madrid to English speaking ears, as many other Madrid podcasts do. But with the fact that you can't use clips from La Liga for like short plays or something like that because you'll get banned for copyright infringement. So you can't even put highlights or something together on when you're doing something like a podcast to show something very quickly. Not retransmit games, which obviously is an issue. That whole thing is obviously making them seem ancient and archaic. And then, of course, all these decisions where, letting a player play when he should be suspended, terrible reffing, you just name it, the racism and the lack of accountability in that regard. It's just wild. It's really wild. So I'm going to leave you all with that. So our next game, obviously, with Real Madrid is tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time. It is Copa del Rey, which is a scary competition for a lot of you Madridistas, including myself. We are always very afraid of these fixtures, because we always feel like this is where we're going to lose and get another Alcoyonazo, where we're going to lose to some third division team and get kicked out of the Copa del Rey and lose the Copa del Rey, which should be a trophy that we should be winning more often than we do. And so we're always afraid that we're somehow cursed. But with that said, guys, this was the podcast. And, hey, one thing that I do want to say to everybody is Happy New Year. Like I was talking at the beginning of the podcast. Like I said, I really want to work on making sure that these podcasts are coming out every single Sunday. Sunday is when I'm going to be doing them. It's Monday today because obviously I had today off. And I'm back from holiday and I actually go back to work tomorrow, unfortunately. But I want to make them every single weekend. And I'm going to be doing one live stream or 2 live streams a month. So join us for those on Twitch, at Nada Mas on Twitch, and of course at Nada Mas Podcast on Twitch and at Nada Mas Podcast on YouTube. You can find those lives, but they will also be posted as regular videos. Of course, you can see them after the fact. They will be posted as podcasts on the audio feed, so you'll be able to see them there, guys. And The other thing too that I wanted to say is, just keep on. One of the things, help us really put out the word. If you're a Madridista, if you're a football fan, you want to get maybe more into Spanish football in La Liga, and you want to choose a team. You definitely couldn't do any better than Real Madrid. So get your friends involved, and help us out, grow there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you do listen to us on Apple Podcasts, ask you a huge favor, which is, of course, to leave us a rating and to leave us a comment, because that helps us grow within the podcast community there on Apple Podcasts. Gets us more visibility, more listens. More listens obviously gets us more subscriptions, and then more subscriptions gets us more growth, which in the end, what I want to do is turn it onto something that we can give back to you guys, as well as hopefully monetizing the podcast and helping this thing grow. Obviously, I want to do more things with other contributors. So if you're interested in contributing to the podcast, hit me up at info@inadamas.net, or hit me up on Twitter or on Instagram. You can send a DM to the Instagram account. I will see that. It's at YNM Podcast. Our graphic designer, he'll throw it my way. So you can send us a message there. If you want to be, maybe a contributor, maybe write something, let me know. I'm going to start looking at all of these things and get somebody to start looking also at some other, if you guys want to write things in, and hopefully we can start getting some more people to be contributors, such as writing and whatnot. And that's about it. That's about it, guys. I think that's it for the podcast. And thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. I will be back in 1 week. We'll see what happens with the Copa del Rey tomorrow, and we'll see what happens with, of course, the game, our league this season in 2023. But I think it's going to be a great one. So check it out, and talk to you guys again soon. Peace.